Hello, I have a word for new leaders today. On Leadership in 30 Minutes, I thought to share certain things with you if you're a new leader and if you are an old leader or you've been at the job of leading others for a while. It might be a useful way of reflecting on your approach to your leadership assignment. But essentially, my word is for new leaders today. And I want to share with you top 8 mistakes that new leaders make. Top 8 mistakes that new leaders make. And if you want to, address the issue, who is a new leader? Well, for this purpose, we'd regard a new leader as one who has just been given responsibility over a team of at least 2 people. All right. You've never had to take responsibility for supervising a team before, whether it's even 1 person or 2 people. And now you have been given that opportunity. That appointment has been handed over to you. Well, you might regard as a new leader as well, someone who, yes, has been in a team, has had a lot of influence in the team. Many people listen to you, but you were never designated as the leader, but you were like, sort of the leader, by proxy. And there are people like that the true leader is a member of the team, is not even the one designated as a leader. But it's a different ball game if you were a leader by influence, which they are, or a leader by designation, in which case you've been given leadership responsibility explicitly. All right. So people like that also will benefit from the 8 mistakes that I want to draw your attention to. And like I said earlier, yeah, you may even be an experienced leader. Maybe you have been moved from one group to the other. So, well, now you have responsibility in a new area for a new team. It might be, a good time to also reflect on your approach to leadership and perhaps to tinker things a bit. In any case, if you have been leading for a while, with the way it is with an axe, axes need to be sharpened from time to time to keep them very effective. So this episode, reviewing 8 critical mistakes, all right, that new leaders make, will still be of benefit to you. So let's get on with it very quickly. Very quickly. I think one of the easiest places to start is the idea that leadership is easy. The idea that leadership is easy. If you ever thought leadership was easy, maybe you've been one of those who have blamed the leaders, in the past, and you are coming to that responsibility with this kind of mentality or mindset. Well, you'll be in for a shocker, and it may well set the tone for you to fail in that assignment. Leadership is by no means easy. Leadership is not the easiest thing to accomplish in the world. Arguably, it is the most difficult thing to accomplish. Why is that the case? Because leadership deals with people. It requires you to supervise people, to supervise them in a way that they improve, all right, in very instructive terms under your supervision. All right, so as it were, the life, the destiny, the future, all right, the worth, the value of the individuals that you have been appointed to supervise is in your hands, is to be determined by what you do or refuse to do. How can that kind of responsibility be easy. How can anybody ever imagine that a responsibility like that would be easy? Now, people are not constants. I always say people are not 2 + 2 is equal to 4. People are emotional beings. People are variable. That person you thought you knew, you'll be shocked that under certain circumstances, the person will show different sides to who they are. And, you'll be wondering, did I ever, is this the same person that I've always known? And such, are the kinds of people you are asked to manage. Such are the kinds of people you are asked to provide guidance, direction for. Such are the kinds of people that you're supposed to be an advocate for. Such are the kinds of people, whose capacity you are supposed to build so that they also can go ahead to lead others. The fact that people are emotional beings more than they are logical beings, all right, is itself a challenge. The fact that they are variables, not constants, tells you that leading them is not, by any means an easy feat. Ask Moses, the challenges he saw. Ask David. Ask Jesus himself, in spite of his sort of larger than life nature. What did he go through? He didn't find it piece of cake to lead. He didn't find it piece of cake to lead. I always say to people, if you find it easy to lead, then you are not doing it right. If you find leadership easy, you are not doing it right. It doesn't matter how experienced you are. If you find leadership easy, you are not doing it right. Yes, compared with some other leader, you may find it easier because you adopt the right kind of approach. However, no matter your experience, leadership cannot and is by no means an easy task. I'll give you an idea, of the nature of this responsibility. I love what the Bible says, except a grain of corn falls to the ground and dies, it abides alone. But if it dies, then it goes on to bring forth a great harvest. That gives you an idea of what leadership is about. The grain of wheat, which is who you are and all that you have to offer, must die. You must give yourself completely, all right, to your people for the purpose of their development. And that's not easy. Yes, you and I eat, but those things we eat, they're the product of sacrifice. A seed had to give its life, its entire being, for you and I to be able to eat. That's the nature of leadership. That's the nature of leadership. Jesus was saying it. He said, look, there is no greater love than for a friend to lay down his life, than for a person to lay down his life for his friend. He said, that's what I do. I have power to lay it down and I have power to take it up again. That's what leadership entails. That's what leadership entails. All right. It's a huge responsibility that demands huge sacrifice. And that's one of the shockers that those who are new to leadership, often get in their naivety. All right. They're carried away by the title. They're carried away by the privileges. But when push comes to shove, they discover that all of that is not what defines the responsibility called leadership. All right, number one. Number two, now, the other thing is the abuse of authority and power. And this is all too common. When people first get into leadership responsibilities or leadership positions, or they are designated as heads, of one team, of one department, of one group, of one society, as the case may be, all right, they often come with authority and some level of power. And there is a reason for that. Because yes, all right, you need the use of authority and power if you are going to be effective as a leader. Forget the people who try to sell you the idea that leadership is about influence, and so you should pursue influence and all of that. Well, the truth is that is true, but you don't command influence from day one with people. No, that's not how it works. It takes some time. You have to build credibility. But while you are trying to build credibility, all right, they need to still collaborate with you. The buck still stops on your table. And so you need some bit of power, all right, so that they know who is in charge, all right, and people can fall in line. They may not agree with you, they may not feel impressed by you yet, but the work has to be done, all right. The objectives have to be achieved, and you have that responsibility to ensure it happens, and that's where you use authority and power. But the issue is power corrupts. Power corrupts. Power corrupts. And absolute power corrupts absolutely. You must have had that. You better believe that it is true. Many of us who have the habit of criticizing leaders, writing leaders off, looking for one thing or the other, always looking to identify the log in somebody's eyes. I mean, when the log actually is in their own eyes. All right, they fall into this kind of trap. When power is put in their hands, not even as much as that commanded by the people they were criticizing, they mess up big time. It's easy to mess up with power. You certainly will be tempted to abuse power in your leadership role. You will be tempted to abuse power. I guarantee you that. And new leaders abuse it. New leaders use it for the purpose for which it isn't meant. They use it for the purpose for which it isn't meant. You need to be careful. When you use power in support of the delivery of your mandate as a leader, not for any other interest, and particularly not to serve self. Not to serve self. You don't serve yourself by the power that position gives you, by the authority, that you can command just because you are a leader. And I tell you, if you abuse power, you are done. You are done. You can't be effective as a leader. You can't be effective as a leader. There's so much to say on each of these, but I just want to run through for today those 8 mistakes. So I call your attention to them, and you can begin to undertake a review yourself, do a self-appraisal, do self-introspection, all right, and approach your leadership responsibility with caution. The second is the third point is abuse of privilege. Abuse of privilege. You must know, and maybe you must have found out now. And if you are not yet there, all right, you haven't taken up the responsibility and you are only preparing yourself because you see it, it can land on your laps anytime. Beware of abuse of privileges. There are privileges that come with leadership. Being in a leadership position, there are privileges that come with it. All right. There are material privileges. There are privileges that come, benefits that you enjoy just because you are the one, who is the captain of the ship. You have to be careful that you don't abuse the privileges. If you have pool cars under you in your department, they are provided, for example, for the use of the business. They are not provided for you to turn them into cars for servicing domestic, or running domestic errands in your home, or, helping friends and, using it as an instrument for securing favor with people or building goodwill. All too often, many leaders abuse the privilege that leadership confers on them. All right. If again, just like with power, if you abuse those privileges, you run the risk of not being in that role for long. You run the risk, of being unable to secure the commitment of your team, because whether you like it or not, your team are watching. And you need credibility with your team if you must succeed in your role as a leader. Let me come to number 4. Number 4 is what I call an independence mindset. Now, what does this mean, you would ask? Well, it means that some people are given the opportunity to lead for the first time. And so they are going into that role with this independence mindset, wanting to go and do their own thing. Now they believe they are free. They are no longer following any leader. They don't have to do what their leader was commanding them to do or was expecting them to do. All right. They can now put their own ideas to practice. They can now run with their own sentiments. All right. That is the independence mindset. Can I surprise you? Every leader, every true leader is made. All right. And no leader who is truly made is supposed to run with an independent mindset. An independence mindset, makes you want to operate as if you learned nothing. All right. As if you were not trained by somebody. All right. To lead. Leadership requires training if you must do it well. And one part of that training can be serving under other leaders. What you learn from them is supposed to empower you to go ahead and handle leadership responsibilities yourself. You don't come to a leadership role and then you want to start trying out your own things. Leadership responsibility is not for the purpose of trial and error. Nobody wants a leader who would come to try out his ideas on the team. A leader who wants to try out his ideas with the team is a dangerous leader. It's a dangerous leader. And if I were one of your followers, I'll be looking for how to jump ship. If I were one of your followers, I will be looking for how to jump ship. If you find a leader who cannot point to people that he or she served under, who cannot point to the fact that he or she was trained, please look for somebody else, all right, to follow. That person will lead you nowhere but to doom. Leaders are sent. Why do I say that? Well, if I handle leadership responsibility today, I'm going to do it according to what I have learned from those who were my leaders of yesteryears, because they made me into a leader. And the purpose of them making me into a leader is teaching me how to lead, so that when I succeed them in any role as a leader, whether taking over from them directly or going on to lead in other areas, is still succession because they prepared me for the role. I am obliged to toe their path. I'm obliged to follow what they taught, not to start putting, my own ideas, unproven, untested, not grounded by any means. The lives of people are too important for you to come and use them as experiments. People are not meant to be used as experiments. Leaders are not meant to experiment with their people. And that's why it's important that you are trained in the business of leadership before you are given the opportunity to lead. And in case that hasn't happened in your own instance, please look for programs, look for people, all right, who can help you to build capacity in that area. All right. So don't pursue an independence mindset. When Joshua was called to succeed Moses, he was told very clearly, you are not to depart from the things that Moses has written, not to the left or to the right. You should uphold them. You should follow them to the letter. That was his mandate. That was great counsel for him. All right. So that he would not go astray. And that's the whole idea. All right. If he was not given that counsel, it was certain to have made mistakes. And imagine 3 million people depending on you, and you want to start doing trial and error. No, that's not the place for it. Even one person reporting to you is not meant to be used as a scapegoat or as an experiment. Number 5, we're still talking about the top 8 mistakes that new leaders make. That's our focus today on leadership in 30 minutes. That's our focus today on leadership in 30 minutes. The top 8 mistakes that new leaders make, maybe old ones as well. All right. So number 5, misplacement of priorities. Misplacement of priorities. And this is something very common. All right. Even experienced leaders make this mistake. They turn leadership priorities on their head. They emphasize the major on the minor and vice versa. And again, you can't do that and not run into serious problems. You can't do that and not make an already burdensome relationship, all right, even more burdensome for yourself. That's what's going to happen when your priorities are not, set properly. And I would help you by just sharing with you what the topmost priority of any leader is and should be. If you're a true leader, of what you want to do first is to create the right environment for your team. Create an environment where they will be inspired to grow and be transformed, all right, through the inputs that you're going to provide. And the first consideration in putting that kind of environment in place is fairness. Create a level playing field. You can't play favoritism. That's not a card that will help you. You can't have respect for persons. You can't treat certain people as touch nots. All right? You must create an environment where everyone has an opportunity to benefit fully from you, to maximize, all right, benefits from you. So that's not what many leaders do. If you ask many leaders, they won't even mention that as number 1 priority, but that's the number 1 priority, all right, of any true leader. And you may be aware that that's one attribute of God that he always puts at the forefront. You would hear repeatedly, God is no respecter of persons. God is a God of justice. You will hear that. Is number 1. Everyone knows that we are equal before God. Number 1. Because if we know, then I know you are not at an advantage over me when it comes to enjoying the benefits that he has to offer. You don't know what that does to the people who look up to you as a leader. You don't know. It makes your life easy. It makes the responsibility a lot easier and a lot more enjoyable. I can tell you that. It's a secret. I can tell you that for a fact. If you want to learn other priorities, you'd have to come to one of our programs. All right? Let me go to number 6. Number 6, mistake that new leaders make. They have no leadership promise. Okay, so what they do is they come, they resume on their job, they take their seat, they are introduced, and the work goes on. And the work goes on. I remember many years ago, there was one very popular track while we were growing up, and the beat goes on. Maybe you know that. I don't know. Maybe if you were born then, you may say, yes, old school, fine, old school, but, things were still very meaningful then, not unlike what you find nowadays. Anyway, that's on the side. No leadership promise. And I ask leaders, all right, who come to this responsibility, even experienced leaders. What's the promise of your leadership? All right, so now you have been designated the leader. You are the head of this team. Everybody is looking up to you. For what? Sir, ma, for what? What's the promise of your leadership? What can they expect to benefit from you? What will they become under your leadership? You have not taken the time to spell that out. And you want to succeed as a leader, and you want people to respect you. You want them to trust you with their lives. You want them to commit their careers to your hands. Oh, no, 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 no. What's your leadership promise? You must have a leadership promise. Otherwise, I mean, that itself is an indication that you're a rookie in the business. It's not about your targets. You want to say, okay, yes, but the department, we already have targets and all of that. Sir, that's not your leadership promise. Your target is for the organization. The people are asking, what's in this for me? What's in it for me? If you are not ready to answer that, you are not ready to lead. And perhaps you shouldn't be leading, because that's a question. Without the people asking you expressly, you had better be ready to answer it. You better be ready to preempt that and lay the cards on the table for that. You know, every time Jesus called somebody to follow him, you know what he told them? He said, follow me and I will make you. Follow me and I will make you fishers of men. So he wasn't just commanding people to follow him. And they weren't stupid that every time they had that invitation, they left everything and simply went along with it. All right? It wasn't an issue of power. It was simply an issue of making sense by way of a leadership promise. The leadership involves a relationship of two people, at the very least, you know, who are going on a journey. The leader is taking the follower on a journey. That journey must have a destination. If somebody is to follow you, wouldn't you like to know where exactly you guys are headed? Oh, I'm sure you will like to know. And so know that those who are following you, they'll like to know as well. Where are you taking us? Where are you taking us? That's why I like that statement in scripture in the book of Jeremiah. He said, for I know the thoughts that I have towards you. They are thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give you a future and a hope. That's a promise. That's a leadership promise. You are leading without a promise. You want to lead without a promise. Quit it. All right? You need to know, you know, and indeed you need to learn how do you even craft that leadership promise. And that gives you a clear sense that leadership also involves salesmanship, because you have to sell that promise so that people can embrace it, so that they can buy it, as it were. Because if they don't, it means it's not sufficiently attractive. You won't secure their commitment, and you can't be as effective in that role as you are expected to be. You can see that's another very crucial mistake that new leaders make, even old leaders or experienced leaders. Number 7, new leaders are not principle driven. What do I mean? If your people ask you, what are the core principles by which you lead or by which you live, what are you going to tell them? What will you tell them? Do you have principles that you subscribe to? Do you have principles that you have been taught by other leaders? Do you have truths, all right, that are at the core of how to do leadership right? These things you need to have. at Emet Leadership Academy, where I am founder and CEO, and which brings you, the platform that brings you, this. Our tagline is leadership nurtured by truth. Our source of truth is the Word of God. We're proud of that. And we teach principles of leadership out of there, not necessarily out of our experience. Like I tell people, if we teach out of our experience, most likely we're teaching you the things that we did that were not correct. And we have since learned what is correct by studying the truth and applying them. And you ought to do the same. You must lead by principle. You must approach the leadership responsibility as a principle-centered responsibility. All right? To do anything less is a mistake, will be a big mistake. And if you have been leading and we were to ask people that are reporting to you about what your core principles are, if they can't tell us, then sir, you are not leading. Or at least you are not doing it right. You are leading blindly. You are flying blind. And you are going to take all the people that you are leading into a ditch. Because that's what happens when the blind leads the blind. The people are depending on you. They can't figure out their way by themselves. If they could, you won't be the one leading them. You won't. Maybe one of them will be leading. But the fact that you have been given that responsibility, a lot rests on your shoulders. Now, the last and not the least, and these 8 are by no means exhaustive. Please don't take it that, I've shared with you 8 mistakes and that's all. No. There are plenty of mistakes. I've just pulled out 8. They are among the top 8 mistakes that new leaders make. There are certainly others. This list is not exhaustive by any means, all right? But these 8 that I have discussed, if you take care of them, I bet you would have addressed at least 80%, of the mistakes that, in terms of substance now, not in terms of just counting enumeration, in terms of substance, all right, you would have accounted for the bulk, for the majority of the mistakes that new leaders make. And so number 8 is placing skill over character. Placing skill over character. Now, new leaders want to impress their team. All right? They're very skillful. Maybe they have one advantage or the other. Maybe they've been around for long. Maybe they were even promoted to the position of leadership because they distinguished themselves in terms of skill. All right. And they were given this opportunity. Maybe, management now thinks, okay, it's time to begin to give exposure, all right, to this guy who has demonstrated great skill. Now let's begin to give him some exposure in the area of leadership. And so when he comes into that role, all right, he's still thinking in his head that his major source of advantage is the skill. At that point, that is what he has to show more than any other thing. And therein lies a big mistake. Because leaders don't showcase skill over character. It's actually meant to be the other way around. The greater impact of your leadership is expected to be on the character of the people, not on skill. It's easy to acquire skill. It's very difficult to build character, strong character. I always talk about character because it's fundamental when it comes to leadership. Leadership is about people. And what matters the most in the lives of people is not their skill, but their character. It's not their skill, but their character. And I'm not saying that skill is not important. We're talking priorities here. In any case, it's more likely that you find somebody with strong character that is skillful than to find somebody that is skilled, highly skilled, all right, and has strong character. Those who are strong in character know the place of skill and they go for it, but they never sacrifice character for skill. But those who are highly skilled and weak in character don't know the place of character, and so, their emphasis is on skill, not knowing that skill does not build character. Skill does not build character, but character can make you acquire significant skills. And I can go into that and demonstrate that, but that's not for, our purpose here. So don't make that mistake. Use that quote of Norman Schwarzkopf. It's a favorite quote of mine. It says, leadership is a potent combination of strategy and skill. But if you must be without one, be without skill. What he was saying is that I would never, as a leader, trade character for skill. I would never. I would never choose somebody who is skillful over somebody with character. And so, in fact, all right, making somebody a leader purely on the basis of skill, it's itself wrong. It's not a good move. It's not a smart move. All right. And it probably exposes the relative weakness of the leadership of that organization. You can't project skill over character. Character is infinitely more important than skill. Infinitely more important than skill. So don't come into your leadership responsibility and then, start showcasing your skill. All right. Start using skill to harass everybody. Start making demands on people, just on the basis of skill. All right. You can make an impact in the area of skill, but if you don't make an impact, a greater impact in the area of character, you would not be effective in your role as a leader. And it will show in your results. It will show in your results. It will show in your results, because I can demonstrate to you as well, all right, how character guarantees more excellent results than skill will guarantee. Character guarantees more excellent results than skill would guarantee. All right. So that's the eighth and the final mistake that we'll be discussing today. The mistakes, top 8 mistakes that new leaders make. Number 1, to run through them again, you think leadership is easy. Oh, is not by any means. Number 2, abuse of authority. That's a trap. Don't fall into it. Number 3 is abuse of privilege. There are privileges that come, all right, with your leadership assignment. Be wary. Don't abuse those privileges. Don't come into your leadership role with an independent mindset. All right? Don't. It's not a position where you toy with the lives of people by trying your own ideas, playing a trial and error approach to leadership. It will not work. Now, number 5, misplacement of priorities. We talked about that and emphasized that ensuring a level playing field, it's topmost priority for any true leader. Number 6, what's your leadership promise? Do you have any? Many want to lead. They come into the role and they have no promise. There is nothing that their people, ought to look towards benefiting from that. They are taking them nowhere. And so they shouldn't be surprised, all right, when their people do not commit to them. Number 7, are you principle driven? You can't be a leader who flies blind. You must be anchored. Your leadership approach must be anchored to clear principles that your people know. All right. And lastly, never place skill above character. Never place skill above character. Never place skill above character. Okay? That's the last all right, that's the last and we have been talking about the top 8 mistakes that true leaders make. The top 8 mistakes that new leaders make. And that's it on Leadership in 30 Minutes today. It's my pleasure and privilege to bring you today's edition. I remain Olatunji Shobodu. And don't forget, you will have programs that will help you to build your capacity to lead in very, very instructive dimension. Check out in the description the Equip program. It helps you. It's a program that helps you to upgrade your capacity to excel within 40 days. We also have the program that is called New You, that if you want to improve your performance, you need to improve you. As you improve you, all right, and the new you emerges, your performance will improve. There is also Antidote. Antidote is a favorite program. Get on it. You discover that it is possible to do the right thing and not get the results promised. Why? Because there are odds that arise against our success. Do you have the capacity to beat those odds? Do you possess the antidote against the odds militating against your success? We show you in that program, Antidote, how a framework that you can use, all right, to position yourself to overcome the obstacles that you will meet on your path to success. And there are many more, programs on office politics and the rest. Well, check them out in the description area. And I look forward to welcoming you to one of our programs, very soon. So that's it for today. It's been Leadership in 30 Minutes, and we have been focusing on the top 8 mistakes that new leaders make. Thank you for joining me. God bless you, and enjoy the rest of your week. Bye-bye.